Max Payne is a video game developed by Remedy Entertainment, releasing in 2001. It was the second game the studio had made, with the first being this small game I had never heard of until like 30 seconds ago called Death Rally, this top-down car combat racer that came out in 1996. I feel, though, it is fair to say that Max Payne was their breakout success, being a massive critical and commercial juggernaut that began an era for the company that is still running strong to this day. Max Payne received 2 sequels, with only the second one being developed by Remedy Entertainment. The third was handled by Rockstar Games. It also received a movie adaptation in 2008 starring Mark Wahlberg as Max and Mila Kunis as Mona. The fuck is that casting? I've always known there was this shitty movie hidden deep in the bowels of this franchise, but I had no idea who played in it until now. I guess I know what I'm gonna be doing tonight. I'm always in the mood for some hot garbage. I was gonna go more into the history of the company and the franchise as a whole, but that's kind of tedious, and you don't really need daddy to read a Wikipedia page to you. I'm sure you can manage that just fine all on your own. All you really need to know is that it is a video game and I wanted to play it. So here I am playing said video game. Every other detail will be brought up if or when it is needed. Max Payne was released on Windows, PS2, Xbox, and even received a GBA version. I was planning on maybe playing through the PS2 version of the game for this video, but after a quick Google search it seems that may be the worst way to play through the game. I could have lived with the downgrading graphics on the console version, but apparently it also had significantly more loading screens, breaking the larger levels seen in the PC version into smaller chunks, with the loading screens in between them. And that was my deal breaker. Do you really think I'm going to sit through more loading screens than I have to in the year of our Lord of 2026? No, that's disgusting. I'm going to play through the PC version like the real hardcore gamer that my mom tells me I am. However, the PC version isn't what I would exactly call super playable on modern systems. With that being said, I seem to have gotten lucky. The game launched fine, but oh boy, was the sound just ear torture. Sound effects sounding bit crunch to all hell and would even overlap to create a cacophony of just utter dog shit. Thankfully, that was very easily alleviated by this very helpful Steam community post that through running one simple exe and messing around in NVIDIA control panel for a second, I was able to get the game running well and in widescreen. However, because I am lazy, I may have skipped a step that needed me to install another program called NVIDIA Profile Inspector, which is required to ensure that the anti-aliasing works properly. If neglected, white lines will show up all over the place. Don't worry, I also got fed up with them in a few hours and decided to fix the issue, so that is why there are white lines all over the place in the early parts of the game. It should also be noted that there is a version of the patch that also upscales the textures as well, but since I could not give a single fuck because the game looks more than fine with its original textures, I might add, I opted for the no texture patch. Finally, thanks to Steam Input, I was also able to play through the game with a controller. Isn't modern PC gaming just beautiful? Too bad it's dying due to how much the cost of everything is skyrocketing so we can get wonderful things like this. Isn't that worth the death of a real art form? Oh yes, Daddy Sam Altman, may I have some more of that boot, please? While I'm in this pissy mood, I kind of feel the need to bitch about the Steam store page for a second. Can someone please explain to me what is wrong with Rockstar and their sales? On Steam, it is very common for games in the same series to be packaged in convenient little bundles, and Max Payne is no different, except how all of the discounts work here. The Trilogy bundle is actually the most expensive way to buy the game. At time of recording, it was just $5 more than buying all of the games separately. But where it gets really weird is that buying the bundle with only the first 2 games and then the third separately saves you an additional $1 on top of that, making it $6 less than the 3-pack. Why? It's not like it's that big of an issue or anything. I just can't help but feel that this is a fuck you to the consumer to trick people into paying $6 more than they had to. But with all of that out of the way, let's dive into this game. So, sit back, grab your idle mobile game, put me up on your second monitor, whatever you degenerates do when you click on a YouTube video, and enjoy as I descend into the thick, blizzardy, macabre world of Max Payne. We start the game with Max standing on top of a building holding a sniper rifle, while what seems to be the entire local police force is setting up a perimeter around that building. Max begins talking, saying how in order to make sense of this, we need to go back 3 years to the night when all the pain started. We cut to Max talking to a DEA agent named Alex, with Alex trying to convince Max to come and work for him. Max laughs this off, saying how the agent will just try to make him work undercover and that his family must come first. We then cut to Max returning home, in which he reflects on how good his life is, going as far as to even say that the American dream has actually come true.
The sun's setting on a sweet summer's day, the smell of freshly mowed lawns, the sounds of children playing, a house across the river on the Jersey side, a beautiful wife and a baby girl. The American dream come true.
But once entering the house, Max notices something amiss. The house is quiet. Nobody is responding. Max notices a giant V and syringe painted on the wall. He walks into the next room where it becomes clear that something terrible has transpired. The house has been ransacked, the walls covered in blood, and with the exception of a ringing phone, it is all still too quiet. Max picks up the phone, pleading to whoever is on the other side to call the police. Unfortunately, they have no intention of helping and instead seem to even take pleasure from the fact the house has been broken into.
Listen, someone's broken into my house. Call 911.
Is this the Payne residence?
Yes, someone's broken into my house. They're still here. You have to...
Good. I'm afraid I cannot help you.
Who is this? Hello?
As well as being an eerie opening to the game's story, this is also where we get our first tease of gameplay. It allows the player to take a look around the house, and it teaches us how to interact with our surroundings. We can open up drawers and closets that will become all too important later when searching for painkillers and ammo, but for now, they are empty. After taking a quick look around the house, we head upstairs when that oppressive silence is finally broken. We hear yelling and a baby crying, ending with sounds of gunfire.
Michelle!
A man emerges from the room who opens fire. Not wanting to be rude, we also do the same, killing this strange man. We kill 3 more intruders when we find Michelle, Max's wife, lying on the bed covered in blood. Max falls to his knees and the main theme of the game begins playing, and it fades into a cutscene where Max lets out a big, prolonged no, even rivaling that of Darth Vader.
No!
Max explains how the intruders were just a bunch of drug addicts on a new drug called Valkyrie. Now with nothing left to lose, Max transfers to the DEA. 3 years then pass when Max decides to go undercover to investigate a lead that a local crime boss named Jack Lapino was trafficking Valkyrie. The first thing you may have noticed is the unique way in which the game tells its story, foregoing pre-rendered or even in-engine cutscenes in favor of using comic panels. With Max being portrayed visually by Sam Lake, the writer of the game, and is even to this day still the face of the company. The voice of Max is done by the late James McAfee, and do I even need to explain how perfect he was for this role and how good of a job he did? It's also not just McAfee that does a great job. I love all of the voice acting, from the small-time goons to even the main antagonist. My personal favorite being that of Jack Lapino, voiced by Jeff Gunner and is portrayed by Remy, I'm not even gonna attempt his name, who only has one acting credit, and that is, well, Max Payne. But it's so not what I thought Jack Lapino was going to look like, looking like just some random guy, like they just needed someone to portray Lapino and he was just the first member of the team to raise his hand. None of this is meant as any kind of insult. In fact, it is what made me kind of fall in love with the game. It grounds it, making it feel more down to earth, almost giving it this raw indie feel to it, while at the same time giving it this unserious goofiness that would not have been present if more professional models were used, creating this beautiful tonal contrast. I have always assumed this choice was made for more budgetary reasons, and how this was just another wonderful example of limitation breeding perfection, but according to an interview Sam Lake did for Edge magazine back in 2008, it seems it may have been more motivated by creative reasons than budgetary. Quote, "We did a lot of streamlining and reorganization of the story, but once you had graphic novels, you can cut them up, put them on walls, follow the whole game and say, you know, That should really be there, and in 30 seconds you've made a dramatic plot change. Even if it meant redoing some of the imagery, you were only taking a day or two instead of a week of doing cinematics, end quote. But whatever the reason, whether budgetary, narrative, or even creative, they are all wonderful, and this game would be nowhere near as good with their absence. But it is the sound design that really brings this game together. First, I love the music. The main theme of this game is an absolute banger. The rest of the music, while admittedly nowhere near as memorable, still fits well for what the game was going for, providing a more than adequate backdrop for the cutscenes and combat. And it's not just the music where the sound excels. The gunfire is chunky and satisfying. You can hear the snow crunching beneath Max's feet, or the howl of the wind when on top of a building. Every level is also accompanied by some wonderful ambient noises, whether it is the groaning and moaning from the local drug addicts, the sound of trains coming and going in the distance. Whatever it is, the ambient sounds does a terrific job at making these levels truly come to life. Max then gets a call from his DEA contact, BB, that he needs to head to the subway to meet up with Alex. On top of it being a very cold night, there's also something else that seems to be bothering him. After Max steps off the subway, we gain control, and so begins the first chapter of Max Payne. I begin by taking a look around the place when I stumble into a big trail of blood with a dead body at the end. I pay this no mind. I mean, who hasn't found a dead person in a subway station? I return from where I came only to find two goons waiting for me. I open fire, giving me my first taste of combat. On the surface, the combat is relatively simplistic, but it is nevertheless still quite fun. But what really sets this game apart from its competition is, of course, the usage of bullet time, which was originally popularized by the well-known release of the 1996 Smirnoff commercial. And was later stolen 4 years later by the Wachowski sisters with the release of a little-known indie film called The Matrix. I think I pronounced that correctly. As for video games, while Max Payne gets a lot of credit for being the first game to also adopt the artistic style from Smirnoff's classic, this is not technically true, with 1999's Requiem: Avenging Angel, developed by Cyclone Studios, being the first true implementation of bullet time. Max Payne was just the first game to, do it well. The player can activate bullet time with a simple press of a button. The game will then enter into slow motion as Max performs a dive. You can also just enter into slow motion without the dive as well. The bullet time in this game is a blast to play around with and definitely gives it its special sauce, reinforcing a very potent power fantasy. There is nothing more satisfying than walking into a room with like 3 goons, killing all of them before they even knew what was happening to them. Now, because this is essentially the first game to incorporate bullet time, it is naturally far from perfect. I'll go a little more in depth about this later, but the gist is that for a lot of the game, it was sometimes better to forego the bullet time in favor of more traditional kinds of play, to such an extent that I wouldn't even be all that surprised if the bullet time was added quite late into the development cycle. Now, If that is true, the developers did a remarkable job at incorporating bullet time into the game, with it not feeling like a tacked on gimmick. However, I feel there was way more they could have done with it, and I'm excited how the bullet time is going to be expanded upon in Max Payne 2 and 3. But for now, all you need to know is that the core combat loop is very fun, especially in the early parts of the game when the enemies are much less of a threat, encouraging the player to engage more in the bullet time mechanics due to the risks of fucking it up being much lower. The combat loop is of course supported by Max's fairly large arsenal at his disposal, broken down into 6 different categories: melee, pistol, shotgun, automatic, explosive, and special. At the start of the game, your available weaponry is fairly limited, only having access to the 2 pistols, the Beretta and Desert Eagle, as well as the pump-action shotgun. The Beretta and later the Ingrams can actually be dual-wielded, and were by far the best option in their respective class. I basically never used the Desert Eagle throughout most of my playthrough. I will concede that it's possible the Desert Eagle is the better option, but for me, it is just the rate of fire with the dual Berettas is unmatched, whereas I found the shot speed with the Desert Eagle to be a little too slow even with its increase in damage. Truth be told, it mostly just came down to the cool factor. Doing a slow motion dive with 2 guns is objectively more badass than with only 1 gun. The shotguns are a more limited class, with the player basically being stuck with only the pump action until like the very end of the game when you finally get the jackhammer, my full auto shotgun baby that I love oh so much. Really wish the game gave it to me much earlier. The only problem I had with the shotguns is how I never really jived with them that much in bullet time. Because of the nature of how shotguns work, they have a very slow fire rate. Naturally, this is exacerbated when entering into bullet time. For people that are good at video games, that isn't necessarily an issue. As long as you can hit what you were aiming at, the damage from the shotgun is more than enough to kill your target. So as long as you are good with positioning, the slow fire rate basically becomes a non-issue. However, for me, I'm extremely skilled at missing my shots. So I will walk into a room, enter into slow motion, miss a shot, and while I'm waiting for Max to rack the slide back, the goon will kill me instantly. None of this is to say the shotguns aren't useful weapons in the game. For me, I just avoided using them in bullet time. As for the automatic weapons, you acquire the Ingrams relatively early, and as stated, is also dual wieldable. These things fucking rip, by the way. Towards the end of part 2, you also get the Colt Commando, an assault rifle that packs a whole bunch of punch that after getting basically became my best friend throughout the rest of the game. The explosive class I basically never used, not because they're bad, no, on the contrary. Outside of a select few instances, I just never really found the game so difficult that I felt the need to reach for the grenades, and like most people, I kinda just forgot they were even there. You also get the grenade launcher later on in the game, and this weapon dishes out a large amount of damage with a massive radius that I mostly only use if I just wanted to end the pain early. And finally, the last class is basically just the sniper rifle, and do I need to explain this one? It's shoot far but slow. It's very effective, killing basically all enemies with only a single shot, but it's incredibly situational. Oh, and I almost forgot about the melee weapons, and these things are useless. Except for breaking open boxes in the one section in the middle of the game when it takes away all of your guns, never really took these things out. And that's Max's arsenal. It's sizable, but it's nothing outstanding. It gets the job done, and it does it well. One of the smaller things that has kind of died more in the modern era is the trail of bodies and blood that are left in your wake. I'm sure this is going to make me sound like a psychopath and should probably belong to an institution rather than being free out on the streets, but I really don't like it when games have the bodies from your fallen adversaries despawn. For me, it just takes something away from that power fantasy. I like seeing the trails of carnage and bodies to be able to visualize how much damage and destruction I as the player is causing. This was a lot more common back in the day than it is now, and I understand why a majority of games have thrown this by the wayside. It takes a lot of computing resources to leave the bodies on the screen, but understanding does not wash away disappointment. Max Payne does not have this issues. Bodies, bloodstains, bullet casings, magazines, and even bullet holes all remain perfectly in place. One of the benefits of not despawning battle remains, other than to satisfy sadistic psychopaths such as myself, is how helpful it is cues in helping keep the player going in the right direction. If the player forgets they have been to an area but see that its floors and walls are covered in giblets, then the player will immediately realize that they have been there before. This was especially useful in 90s FPSs, where the levels are these huge labyrinths, and while this is not as important in Max Payne due to the levels being a lot more linear than in Doom or Duke Nukem 3D, it is still quite helpful at times, but what it really does for this game is to help support and lift up that power fantasy. I encounter a locked gate in my path, so I look around to see if there's another way through. I walk into a locker room where there's this security guard that is more than happy to help me unlock the door to the maintenance room, assuming you don't kill him, which I may or may not have accidentally done my first time.
Save me, man.
The pressure was too much. I'd sunk down to their level. It wasn't worth it. Nothing was.
If you manage to not kill the security guard, he is more than happy to help you unlock the door. Unfortunately for this guy, there are some goons in the room who kill him immediately. Sucks for him, I guess. Max pays him no mind, and we continue our search for Alex. We turn on the power to Train 2, which allows us to ram into this barricade, bypassing a locked gate. While this is nothing short of badass, it's also completely psychotic, showing just how focused and determined Max is in his quest, with not a care in the world. It is a nice piece of character building while also creating a fun set piece for the player. I fight through a few more goons and then ending the chapter. Max Payne is divided into 3 parts, each with a prologue in the beginning. Part 1 is then subdivided into 9 chapters. Part 2, 5. Part 3 has 8. Each chapter varies in length, but all took around under an hour to beat, with the game taking about 9 hours in total to beat on a normal playthrough, which I felt was a good length for the game, never overstaying its welcome. And outside of maybe a few sections in the latter half, I never felt like there was too much padding in an attempt to thicken up the game's runtime. It's a short little thing that's easy enough to beat within a good weekend. I then encounter a welded door that happens to have a bomb planted on it. Unfortunately, the detonator was missing. I begin my search for it, crashing this in-progress bank robbery, where I find the detonator as well as the booty the robbers were after, a bunch of bonds for a massive corporation named Aesir. With the detonator in hand, it was time to blow open the door. We are then treated to a nice slow-motion shot of the door flying across the room. Once entering, we run into Alex. We explain to him what we have found, but just then Alex is murked by some goon just out of Max's eye line. Max confirms that he is indeed dead from the empty, accusing stare in his eyes.
There was nothing I could do. He was dead. I could tell by the empty, accusing stare of his eyes.
Max explains how Lupino is trying to make him take the fall for the death of Alex. All this is done is seemingly to piss him off. Max then heads to Lupino's hotel in hopes of having a little chat with him. Instead, he encounters these 2 chuckle fucks who you immediately kill, triggering what I think is supposed to be the first boss fight in the game, but this one is fairly easy and they go down without much of a fight. We'll talk more about the bosses a bit later. We learn about Lupino's right-hand man, Gog Needy, and how a scary guy named Rico Morte is here to help a drug deal go by smoothly, and that he is even staying in room 313 of the hotel. So with our new target, Maximilian and I continue on our fun little adventure. But first, some goons come knocking, so I patiently wait with a grenade in hand, turning them into a bunch of gooner goo. Wait, that doesn't sound quite right. I then run into a radio talking about how Max is wanted by the police. I'm a little mixed on how this game decides to tell its story and convey world building. Throughout the game, there are these notes, TVs, and radios that are lying around the place that when interacted with triggers a small cutscene, with Max talking about whatever he found. On one hand, there are these nice little breaks that really help fill out the world and the story, as well as giving us some insight into how Max is feeling with the day's events. However, there are almost just too many of them, making this game have a bit of a start and stop feel to it. Now, I want to be clear that I find it a bit difficult to blame the game for this, because undeniably one of the reasons this might bother me is more due to how many modern games use this style of storytelling. To be completely honest, I'm just a little done with how games use audio and text logs as one of the primary ways of telling a story. It's not that it's an inherently bad way of doing things, it's just very overplayed, so much so that even when going back to older games, such as in our case here, that anti-log bias that I have is still very much present. As I reflect on it, I think I feel this game implements it quite well. First, they are relatively short, like only one comic panel long, equating to around 10 seconds. Second, they are also quite fun, being filled with some of that cheesy over-the-top writing and line delivery, and truth be told, there just really isn't that many of them, and my annoyance by them is more likely a symptom of my Zoomer brain rot than a real issue I had with the game. I continue making my way through the hotel, killing anyone who dares challenge me when I come across a TV playing a new episode of Lords and Ladies.
For this shame is too great for the living. My lord, I am your long-lost sister.
One thing that will become a reoccurring element as we go through Remedy Entertainment's games is just how much they love including in-universe shows, with Alan Wake going as far as to even have entire episodes of a fake version of The Twilight Zone, but we'll get to those once we get to Alan Wake. Here they don't play as much of a part, however they are still fun to listen to whenever they are around. The world building in this game is nothing short of great. The game designers did a phenomenal job at bringing this world to life through things like the radio and TV message, as well as the in-universe comics and sitcoms, or how all of the seedy rundown buildings have a large amount of homeless drug addicts taking shelter from the oppressive cold outside, or how the outside feels empty and abandoned with everyone hiding from that same storm. All of these elements accumulate to create a very potent atmosphere that turns this game from just a linear shooter where you play as a discount store Punisher to something wholly unique and a true joy to experience. You can feel the slicing of the cold wind every time you walk outside and that warm reprieve whenever you enter a building. You can feel how damaged this city is, how much of a stranglehold this new drug Valkyrie has on its inhabitants. While all of these themes are conveyed in dialogue in equal part, they are conveyed through the level design, art direction, sound design, and of course the voice acting. It is a truly wonderful recreation of the Neo-Noir genre inside of a video game. I think I have to level with you here though that I'm not much of a noir fan. I have no issue with the genre other than just I haven't seen very many movies in said genre, so I may be talking completely out of my ass here. Feel free to let me know if I am. Okay, check off obligatory engagement bait off the list. Even though I am very much an outside observer of noir, one element I have always appreciated is that thick noir atmosphere. It has always had this eerie, depressing coziness to it. Sure, they may be these vice-ridden, dark, crime-infested hellscapes constantly teetering between apathy and nihilism, painting an absurdist picture of the world, but through that it also creates a world that looks alien in its appearance but feels all too familiar at its core. It feels a bit like home, sure a dark, abusive one, but home nevertheless, and it is that dark coziness that Max Payne nails oh so well. Continuing on with the game, we finally make it to Muerte's room, where we are greeted with this nice little shotgun trap and a letter on the desk. We learn that the Dawn is also linked to Valkyrie. This is going all the way to the top. I then grab the key from the coffee table that unlocks the door to the bar while Rico Muerte is complaining about his goons while also engaged in some tonsil hockey. I rudely interrupted Muerte, which began his boss fight. It took me a while to figure out how I felt about the bosses in this game. At first they were quite annoying. They can be these massive bullet sponges that takes hundreds of bullets to finally go down. To make matters worse, a lot of the bosses also come packaged with a gaggle of goons. Combining that with just how little health Max has, I thought the bosses were unfair and annoying in the early parts of the game, but as I got deeper, I started to figure out how to play it better, beginning to understand what the bosses were going for. They are all quite challenging, all taking me a few attempts to get through, but I enjoyed having to learn the bosses through those repeated attempts, at times feeling similar to a puzzle. We then pick up the engrams from Muerte's corpse when we intercept a call and find that the mob is starting to shake in their boots from Max Payne.
Are you freaking kidding me? He's just one lousy cop. You better be freaking kidding me. Whack him. What's the freaking problem? Hello? Answer me. Hello?
The word was out. A deadly virus released into the city's corrupt circulatory system. Something wicked this way comes. Max Payne at large.
We then learned that a mob war is starting to brew when Lupino's hangout is destroyed by the Russian mob. So with Lupino's goons spooked and the cops on the way, Max continues on his crusade. After entering the building, I encounter a locked door with nowhere to go. So my gamer brain tells me that I should shoot this red canister. So I do. However, let's just say it didn't exactly go as planned. I reloaded and did the same thing, except this time I decided to stand away from the explosion. I now understand why my parents never let me have fireworks as a child. We then encounter this ringing payphone, with this strange man named Mr. Wooden warning us about how the cops are on the way. One of the issues I had with my playthrough in this is definitely just a me thing that doesn't seem to be conveyed very well through the recording, is just how dark this game can be. By this point in my playthrough, I have turned my monitors and the game's brightness all the way to max, and there were still more than a few times I literally could see absolutely nothing. I had to navigate some of the environments with nothing more than some vague shapes, the white lines from the fucked anti-alias scene, and my hopes and dreams. With all that being said, I didn't find it too much of an issue. I was still able to find where I needed to go without much of a hassle, which is a little impressive for me due to my immaculate ability to get lost even in a tunnel. I head up some stairs when all of a sudden a grenade comes flying from above, killing me instantly. Max Payne is very heavily reliant on trial and error, something I was not necessarily expecting when I started the game. That reliance only grows as the game goes on. Now, to be clear, this isn't necessarily a criticism. The game thankfully has a quick save and load anywhere system. As long as you are diligent with saving, you should never have to replay too much of the game. But it is not uncommon to walk into a room and immediately get one-tapped by a guy with a shotgun standing in a corner off screen. Naturally, all you need to do to avoid this is to be careful and always check them corners. In the latter parts of the game, I genuinely started to play this more like Hotline Miami. Die, reload, repeat 10 times, then win. And after figuring this out, the fight started to feel a lot more like a puzzle. I was having a lot of fun repeating and trying to find the best way through each encounter, testing new weapons, new tactics, and anything I could think of to get me through a gunfight in one piece. There were even times when I would win a gunfight and say to myself, you know what? I could do that one better, and reload just to try again. At first, I really wanted to criticize this for how it kind of ruins the flow a bit and thus decreases the power fantasy, but I learned to embrace the game for what it is and not what I wanted it to be. After which, the game clicked and I was having a blast. On top of that, there is also something that Max says a bit later on that I think really recontextualizes this game, adding in much appreciated thematic context. After shooting our way through the laundromat, we take this nice elevator ride up, accompanied by some soothing music, giving Max a brief respite and a relaxing moment to regain focus and center himself so he can more effectively slaughter half of the population of New York. We finally made it to Gogniti's room, the next person on Max's fun time list, but he gets away.
About you? What do you think you're doing? You're a freaking cop. You ain't got squad on us. You can't just come in here waving your piece like it meant something. Yeah! Oh my God! Oh God, you shot me! Ah! You're dead, Payne! What the hell are you waiting for, you apes? Kill him! Kill him! With pleasure, boss.
Gogniti bailed. I made like Chow Yun fat.
We make chase, but first we take some time to read a letter that Gogniti wrote to the Dawn, talking about how Lupino has apparently gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, all while Gogniti gets away. I'm sure he'll be considerate though and wait for us to catch up. We then have to jump onto this moving train to keep up with the chase. Naturally, I fuck this up on my first attempt, and I have no idea what I did differently on the second attempt. After getting off the train, we continue chasing and killing, even taking the time to appreciate some nice billboards. We then finally reach up with Gogniti, and we get into this fun but fairly difficult gunfight that required me to be careful on who I aggroed. Utilizing my favorite tactic of activating a dive while standing behind a corner just outside of the goons' sightlines, killing them before they even knew what happened. It is moments like these where the combat system really clicks in, and where the time to die actually starts to work in favor of that combat loop. Sure, Max has less health than the enemies, but all it does is require you to think a bit outside the box, utilizing the game's mechanics to ensure you can make it out alive. After beating Gogniti, we do some of that sweet police brutality to get him to tell us where the Pino is.
Ah! Police brutality!
I rate pretty high on that.
You can't just hurt me in cold blood?
Just keep telling yourself that. Listen good, Candyman. I'm not gonna be anybody's fall guy. I wanna know where your boss is hiding.
He tells us he's in this private nightclub called Ragnarok. Throughout the game, there are a whole bunch of references to Norse mythology, with talks at the end of the world, the snowstorm being analogous to Fimbulwinter, and of course the nightclub being called, well, Ragnarok. I am sure there is a lot to analyze within the Norse mythology metaphor, but I really know nothing of Norse mythology, so unfortunately I will not be covering that other than the occasional reference or two throughout the rest of the video. For all intents and purposes, within this essay, the mythology is primarily here as a thematic background backdrop to help build intrigue to the main villains and the world as a whole, and looking at it through that lens, I feel it is quite successful in this endeavor. A few rooms over, we find some more books and papers, and it becomes clear that Lupino is not just intrigued by the occult, but is genuinely trying to become an agent of Satan. I wish him luck. I'm sure it'll be very helpful in our inevitable fight. I encounter another room that took me a while to beat, probably the hardest part of the game so far, and it was the first time I started to feel that my tactic of overusing the bullet time was starting to fail. Unfortunately, I was not smart enough to adapt here, so I just kept trying it over and over again until I finally emerged victorious. We then have to do some janky as fuck beam walking. God, I hope this isn't a recurring thing in this game, he says, knowing full well of what is about ready to come. We then stumble into the backstage to find the remnants of some crazy ritual / human sacrifices taking place. We then learn that there's some trouble in paradise when we find a bloody, crumpled up note addressed to Lupino from Don Puccinello. After finding some more crazy writing from Lupino, we get some of my favorite line deliveries in the game, with the best being when Lupino screams the name of these demons.
Mythic wolves, let loose to devour the sun and the moon. Lupino is the wolf. I'm Mr. Beast, the big bad Fenris wolf. I'm the end of the world man, wearing the flesh of fallen angels. Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Baphomet, Lucifer, Loki, Cthulhu, Lilith, Hela, blood given to you all.
But what I really love is how after all of that, Max gives some poignant analysis of the subjectivity about the end of the world, and how it doesn't matter if the world external to you is truly ending or not. If the subjective reality that we all have is coming to a quick and bloodied conclusion, it might as well be that true end of the world.
After Y2K, the end of the world had become a cliche. But who was I to talk? A brooding underdog avenger alone against an empire of evil, out to right a grave injustice. Everything was subjective. There were only personal apocalypses. Nothing is a cliche when it's happening to you.
What I really like is how it implies how Max is the harbinger of destruction, the angel of death that has been sent here to take away everything Lupino cares about away, and including in some good subjective philosophy, following some of the best over-the-top line dialogue I have ever heard, creates this beautiful tonal mismatch that I can't help but fall in love with. This game really is truly something special. As we climb the stairs approaching Lupino, we hear more chanting and screaming about how this is the end of the world, and I can't get enough of this fucking goober.
The flesh of fallen angels, come to me all. Astaroth, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Baphomet, Lucifer, Loki, Satan, Cthulhu, Lilith, Hela, blood to you all. Secret, living under the skin of reality. I've seen it, the corruption of flesh. I'm the wolf, yeah! I am the wolf! It's close. It's coming. You have come. A witness to the end of time. It's now! I will rise to her side! I don't need the words! I'm beyond the words!
We then get to whatever is going on in this room when we are ambushed by Lupino's men. After promptly dispatching them, we are finally face to face with the main man himself. We get one of the best cutscenes ever with Lupino just hamming it up, after which ensues a boss fight.
I had known there'd have to be a catch in it somewhere, and this one was the Empire State Building of catches. Lupino was pumped up and dying to go 15 rounds with a mutant alligator. And then he started this spooky monkey talk, straight from a bad dream. Mine.
I have tasted the flesh of fallen angels. I've tasted the devil's green blood. It runs in my veins. I've seen beyond a world of skin, the architecture of blood and bow and arrow. Death is coming! She is coming, and hell follows with her. This is the twilight winter. I am ready to be her son. Her time is now, and all who stand in her way must die! Die!
Killing Lupino wraps up part 1 of the game. We then start part 2, A Cold Day in Hell. We start off by meeting Mona, the twin sister of the Don's wife. We learn that she hates the Don just as much as we do and even suggests that we team up. Max agrees, but then she immediately drugs Max with Valkyrie. Like, what the fuck? Apparently it is so we don't go berserk and kill her sister Lisa. Okay, I guess that makes sense, but it's a bit of a crazy overreaction if you ask me. It is such a hilariously beautiful contrived way to get us into our first nightmare sequence that I can't help but love, but oh boy, are these sections a bit of a mixed bag. They are very narratively interesting, and I'm happy they are here, just mechanically, holy shit do they suck. Let's just get the bad out of the way first, because I definitely like these scenes a lot more than I hate them. They start off fine, with you walking through some creepy hallways of Max's house around the time of his family's murder. We then reach to what I'm going to call these blood-type ropes, where we need to reach the end of this maze by following the baby's cries. But thanks to the excellent audio design, it really isn't that much of a hassle. What ruins these sections is just how unforgiving and janky these bloodlines are. They are just way too thin, making it super easy to fall off to your death. For the most part, the first one is not all that bad, due in large part to the ability to save scum, but it is the second one of these in the beginning of part 3 that really began to churn my butter. Some asshole decided that the first one was just a wee bit too forgiving, so they made the lines even thinner and introduced some jump for good measure. Why? What on God's decaying earth compelled you to make this choice? I really wanted these sections to be quiet little breaks from the action, giving my mind time to wander, to contemplate the narrative of the game, and with how dense and esoteric these nightmare sequences are, it would have been very much appreciated. But because of just how god-awful these sections are, my mind was much more focused on trying to navigate these horrible traversal puzzles than thinking about the story the game was trying to tell me. Now, to be clear, for the most part, I consider my criticism here to be more on the nitpicky side than a real issue with the game. However, it is just undeniably my biggest criticism with Max Payne. But as for the good of these sections, I love the narrative. It starts with Max awakening in his house, but it's different, even alien. It's dark, but with just enough light to see where you're going. It's accompanied by this subtle green filter. Max can hear the distant crying from both Max's baby and his wife. We begin walking through these long, expanding hallways when we encounter this crossroads leading to more long hallways. We then pick the path where the crying is coming from, only to be greeted with more paths. I start to notice that it's not just crying we are hearing, it is pleading. Max's wife is asking Max why and how she didn't mean to and that she is sorry.
No, please, Max. Why? I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
We finally make our way out of the hallway labyrinth, but the nightmare is far from over. We then run down this blood-soaked hallway with an ominous lullaby playing in the background when we encounter the bloodline mazes.
I really love to watch cartoons.
I eventually find my way through, taking us to the baby's room. The green tint is now gone, replaced with this blood red one instead. Max then walks down one final hallway when we hear Michelle once again pleading. We then cut to Max shooting somebody, but we can't see who. The screen fades to black, and we then hear someone screaming murderer and how we killed her.
Murderer! You killed her!
Nothing like that ever happens in the real world.
Max wakes up tied to a chair. The nightmare is finally over. This whole scene is a beautifully extended metaphor for Max's guilt. It becomes clear that Max believes that he killed his wife and child, and even if he didn't pull the trigger per se, in his mind he might as well have. The hallways represent his quest, and how the further he goes down it, the more it expands in front of him. The deeper he gets, the more and more lost he becomes. But it is his own guilt that is driving him forward, giving him this direction. The bloodline is a trail of blood that Max is creating, using that blood as a precarious platform, carefully balancing as he attempts to save his family and find that redemption. But no redemption is found by reaching the end. All he finds is more guilt and more bloodshed. Max wakes up tied to the chair in the basement of Lupino's hotel with a friendly dude with a baseball bat. After that guy gets some t-ball practice with Max's head, he tells me about how much of a fan of cartoons he is. Max then begins introspecting about his quest so far. He feels maybe he was just a a little too eager. Max gets a little impatient, waiting for his baseball bat friend to return, so he decides to escape all on his own. We grab the bat, and I find the first guy with a gun and proceed to beat him upside the head till he falls, grabbing his gun and killing everyone else in the area. I have no idea if I did this section the intended way, but it took me more than a few attempts to clear them all out. This section is one of the better examples of the fun trial and error loop. I had a blast learning from each attempt, using that to update my tactics until I was finally able to achieve that sweet victory. How I was eventually able to beat it is by running outside this room, killing these two goons, grabbing their guns, and quickly running back into the room, waiting for the rest of the goons to show up, and then try to kill each one of them as quickly as possible, using the door and my abilities to my advantage. As I was clearing out the basement, trying to find my way back to the main section of the hotel, that is when I first began to realize that maybe my strategy for winning gunfights is not by abusing the bullet time, like I have been doing for most of my playthrough, but is instead to just circle strafe them. This is a little unfortunate. With how fun, unique, and badass the dive is, and how it is what sets the gameplay of Max Payne apart from its contemporaries, circle strafing is more often than not faster, more consistent, and much better for avoiding damage. What keeps this from being anywhere near a fatal flaw is first, the dive is still quite useful, such as when diving around corners or when you have the drop out on some goons, but if not used carefully, you will find yourself taking more damage than you may have otherwise. And two, this game's combat would still be a blast even if the bullet time was absent, so these mechanics feel like a nice added bonus to an already tight combat loop. And finally, it's the first game to include bullet time, so it's not really fair to criticize the game for not using this brand new system to its fullest. With all of that being said, I still found myself using the bullet time constantly, even when it was detrimental to do so, mainly because it was badass and it made me feel like Neo. Basically, it's fun and I like it. I continue blasting and popping PKs like Tic Tacs, eventually finding my way to the entrance of the hotel. However, this time it is blocked off with police tape. We break the tape and head straight to the lounge. We then get truly some of the funniest shit in this game, overhearing a goon talking to the phone just repeating, "Just forget about it," like 3 times over.
Just forget about it. Just forget about it. Hey, just forget about it.
When getting to the bar, we encounter Frankie, triggering a boss fight that took me, more times than I care to admit. After putting what feels like over 1,000 bullets into his torso and save scumming my way to victory, I was able to finally kill Frankie. We then run into the Russian mob, who promises us guns if we can secure this massive cargo ship, so we then make our way to the docks. I am going to go through this section a little quickly, mainly because nothing super interesting happens. In a worse game, I may have called this section padding, but with just how short the game is and how fun the combat is, I had no real issues with this section. You get the sniper rifle, which is a fun and very useful weapon. It also comes packaged with a nice but slightly underwhelming kill cam. However, towards the end of the section, you have to maneuver this crane through this dockyard while you are attacked by a bunch of goons from the ground. It gives me a good opportunity to try out my new gun. I will say that the crane does move quite slowly, and I can even see an argument that this section would be quite boring to some, and I think they would even have a point. The goons come out in fairly predictable patterns and in such small numbers that it would be a stretch to call this section difficult, especially with my constant save scumming. I could even see myself feeling that way on repeated playthroughs, but this is my first time around, and with my new shiny gun in hand, I enjoyed the break that it provided. I finally made my way to the ship, but now I'm low on painkillers, so I have to try to play it nice and safe in order to stay alive. I decide to not do that, relying on my crick load to make my way through this section, dying countless times until I'm able to finally brute force my way to success, like the true professional gamer that I am. After killing the captain, the ship is back safely in the hands of the Russian mob. Our reward is that we are allowed to loot anything from this tiny little storage room, where we acquire the Colt Commando. Now that we got the guns, even though in game the only thing we got from securing this ship is this one rifle, so it's not like really anything is all that materially different than before the ship, but Cutscene Max is happy, and what is good enough for Cutscene Max must be good enough for Gameplay Max. So we make our way to the Don. Max decides to try to trick the Don by telling him we are ready to make a deal, with the Don telling us to meet him at his restaurant. However, the Don must have known something fishy was going on, because after taking literally only one step into the restaurant, the entire thing starts blowing up. For the most part, I enjoyed this section. However, my issues with the brightness kind of came back with a vengeance, with the fire being my only real source of illumination. You do have to be careful though. One wrong turn and you're screwed. being trapped in a corner with no other option than to run through the fire. But touching the fire, even for a second, will kill you. I guess today I learned that the fire apparently hurts when touched. Who would have ever guessed? Subscribe if you would like to hear more insightful analysis such as this. After spending a few minutes trying to navigate this ginormous restaurant, I finally make my way to the safety of the kitchen. Of course, not without a few instant deaths that I can't help but feel is a nicely packaged fuck you from the game designers. But I'm not in the clear yet, because in the next room over there are a bunch of goons waiting eagerly to goon all over me. Why would I write that? What the fuck is wrong with my head? I then run into the Russian mob, who gives me a ride to the Don's mansion. We are then treated with my favorite dialogue in this game, with Max introspecting about how his success in this mission is not about skill or him being a genius. The only reason Max has gotten this far is because of luck and luck alone.
The trick in my situation was that there was no trick, no matter what the movies tell you. No rules, no secret mantra, no roadmap. It wasn't about how smart or how good you were. It was chaos and luck, and anyone who thought different was a fool. All you could do was to hang on madly, as long and as hard as you could.
Contrasting this to Lupino and to a lesser extent the Dawn, for them Max is on some preordained crusade sent by a divine entity. For them Max is the harbinger of death, meant to fulfill a prophecy and to bring about the end of the world. But for Max, he just sees himself as some dude, determined, hell-bent on his goals, but at no point ever thought he would make it this far. But as long as he was still alive, he was never going to stop. This scene I also feel does a lot to recontextualize the gameplay, or more specifically the trial and error. Things are going to get a little weird for a second, but please stay with me, I only hope they'll make sense by the time I'm done. In trial and error games such as Max Payne, the player is not expected to go through the level in one go. You are meant to die, learn, and retry, repeating that same cycle over and over again until you are finally able to grasp a victory from the jaws of defeat. Through repetition, your reliance on luck will begin to diminish, and your skill will then manifest. Looking at Hotline Miami for a second, when you enter into a level for the first time, you are kind of guaranteed to die at least a few times. While it is not impossible to beat a level on your first go, it would require an astronomical amount of luck to do so. With each death, you learn something usable that gives you an advantage. Your skills and knowledge increase, and in doing so, the luck that is required decreases. Luck and knowledge thus have an inverse relationship. Through that repetition, the player will start to rely on their own muscle memory, or an intuitive understanding for how the enemies will react to you, and the knowledge for the best possible paths forward. With enough practice, the reliance on luck will approach a null state, and the player will have complete control over the engagement. And with that control, the player may be able to beat the entire game with only one life. But it is not luck that affords the player that ability, but in fact the minimization of it that can only be achieved through countless attempts and extensive repetition. This is where trial and error games such as Hotline Miami, and to a lesser extent Max Payne, thrive. However, this knowledge is only held in that of the player. The character, in our case Max Payne, is completely divorced from that gain in knowledge the player is building. For Max, there is no dying and trying again. The knowledge afforded to the player with each attempt is immediately erased from Max's perspective each time the player presses quick load. The only canonical attempts are the ones that result in success. Max is doing all of this in one go, like he is doing a flawless run of Hotline Miami for his first time. For Max, it is nothing more than luck that is getting him through. Shrouded in ignorance of the player's knowledge, the game creates this thick sense of dramatic irony, one that Max is even starting to gain suspicion of, so much so that when the fourth wall finally comes down within the next nightmare sequence, and Max is confronted with the fact that he is indeed in a video game, an idea he finds repulsive, but I believe is still nevertheless sympathetic to. At this point in his journey, with all that he's been through, scraping by nothing more than his ass hair, is the concept that he is just in a video game really all that more crazy than getting this far by nothing more than complete luck? From his perspective, it is rational to see himself in a video game. This all comes together to create a unique sense of ludonarrative harmony, affording the player existence while still allowing the game's world and characters to remain grounded. The player stops just being a player and becomes the manifestation of the character's will, tenacity, obsession, an external deterministic force guiding Max through his quest for vengeance. Getting back to the game, we enter the Dawn's back door that was left wide open. We learn that the Dawn is actually having a slumber party with the trio, a group of 3 highly skilled hitmen. So with no further ado, We get a killin'. This might be my favorite section of the game. It is a difficult but exciting blast, shooting your way through this house, taking out the trio one by one. I enter into a bedroom with a dead body on the bed, with it not being clear if it's the Don's wife or Mona. In the next room, we pick up a ringing phone with that strange Mr. Wooden on the other line, warning us to expect company. We take out the last guy in the trio, and we finally come face to face with the Don. Unfortunately, right when we were about to pull the trigger, a gaggle of armed men come bursting through the door to kill the Don. After dealing with our unwelcome guests, I leave the room only to be greeted by this lady. We will learn later that she is the one truly responsible for the Valkyrie epidemic. She then drugs Max with Valkyrie, bringing us to the end of part 2 and into our second nightmare sequence. Max begins hallucinating about shadows and green blood. When we finally regain control, we are standing in the middle of Max's house. We follow the pleading voice of Max's wife asking where we are, but once we enter the bedroom, we then teleport back to the office. But this time, everything is on fire. We approach the desk, and this is where we get those weird fourth wall breaking cutscenes.
Bartender is shiny stuff and dreams are made of stooped necromancers. He sings like a banana wrist, having strayed too close to the constellations on their shaved skulls. There was a bad line in the prank call. Someone spouting insane babble. I couldn't make sense of it. But I had an overwhelming sense of deja vu. The caller's voice sounded oddly familiar. There was something disturbingly familiar about the letter before me. The handwriting was all pretty curves.
You're in a computer game, Max.
The truth was a burning green crack through my brain, weapon statistics hanging in the air, glimpsed out of the corner of my eye, endless repetition of the act of shooting, time slowing down to show off my moves, the paranoid feel of someone controlling my every step. I was in a computer game. Funny as hell, it was the most horrible thing I could think of.
Leaving the office, we find the bloodlines again. Following them leads us to this strange, overturned crib. We hear Max's wife screaming as it fades to black. When it finally fades back in, we are then face to face with ourselves inside of Max's room. We get into a gunfight with ourselves, successfully killing the other Max. But it's too late. Michelle is already dead. We then get a cutscene that begins to illuminate why Max might blame himself. Maybe if he just listened to her, she would still be alive.
Max, something happened at the office today. A strange memo. Something about Vikings.
Honey, I gotta run. You can tell me all about it this evening.
Have a nice day, darling.
The bullet holes were rubies on her chest, blood glowing on her ivory skin. She was so beautiful. The killer was smiling. The flesh of fallen angels.
But just then, Max snaps out of it and we return to the nightmare in the real world. After surviving the overdose, we make our way to the factory where the strange lady said she was going to. Whereas the last section in the mansion was my favorite part of the game, the factory might be my least favorite. First, visually it's kind of dull, not looking all that different than the warehouses in the shipyard. It's just a generic looking factory setting that I just never really cared about. However, in an attempt to spice things up, they included some new mechanics such as trip mines, which are at best nothing more than a mild nuisance. The mines are easily spotted and are taken out by nothing more than a single bullet. But that is only if the mine part is visible. When it's not, things get really complicated. Instead of just shooting it, you have to use a grenade. Oh my god, so challenging. Okay, I'm being an asshole. This section really isn't that bad. It's just fairly uninspired, feeling a little tacked on, and dare I say, even rushed. By this point in the game, the combat fatigue is starting to kick in a bit. The loop is the same, and it has that good difficulty curve, but that's kind of my issue. It's just more of the same, and the curveballs the level throws at the player just really aren't all that great. For example, there are these poorly designed platforming sections, such as when you have to get across these little ravines. Sometimes it's pretty clear what the danger is, such as it being full of molten metal. Other times it's just grates. Like, look at this. What about this seems so dangerous that it will kill Max with even a single touch of the big toe? But no matter what the obstacle is, the effect is the same. If Max touches the ground inside of these guardrails, he dies instantly. In one of these little sections, there are even these chunks of metal traveling across the ravine, so I assumed you had to jump onto the metal slabs like in Frogger. But no, that also killed me. So I just went to the left and walked across this little platform. I have no idea if this is how you're supposed to get across this room, but with just how easy it is, I'm inclined to believe so. And this obstacle is repeated 3 times, all with the same solution. Take the left path. Then there's this other section where you have to get into this little trolley thing and slowly move across this room full of fire, blowing up the trip mines before Max runs into them. Reaching the other side of the room, the door opens, and surprise, there are 3 guys waiting to ruin my day, killing me instantly. I reload the game, having to repeat that trolley ride again, but this time I was prepared for the surprise men and had my grenade launcher armed and ready, which seemed to do the trick quite nicely. It was neither a hard nor fun part of the game, it was just kind of there. The worst part about the level is just how in between all of these obstacles are some of the most uninspired, drab hallways with only a couple of soldiers standing in your way. So this level's loop is just essentially walking through some boring hallways, killing generic soldiers, traversing boring obstacles, then more boring hallways. To be fair, while this is undeniably my least favorite part of the game, this section just isn't that bad, mostly due to how mercifully short it is, taking me only 30 minutes at most to get through. And the next level is where this game goes off the rails a bit, and I do mean in a good way. We then reach this elevator that takes us down to this super secret corporate/government lab. We are treated with a cutscene equipped with some wonderful face models and a trigger-happy goon cleaning up loose ends.
You can't do this! My men are still inside!
Do you have any idea why this is called Operation Deadeyes?
I think he's dead already.
Let's do it.
The goons then activate a self-destruct sequence. Max then takes notice of a logo on the ground, and we then progress our way through the facility trying to find a way out when we encounter a locked decontamination chamber. We then take the elevator to the prison floor where we find one of the facility's scientists imprisoned in one of the cells, who is more than eager to help us unlock the chamber. I keep making my way through the lab until I encounter a computer with classified information on it. Max naturally has to take a little peek-see when a guy with a nice soothing voice teaches us some Norse mythology. He then explained a brief history of the Valkyrie project, and then we learned something much, much darker.
Project compromised. Data leak. Fix the damage by any means necessary. Security clearance red. Authorized by the project lead. Field test. Double the dosage for all the remaining test subjects. Observe and record the subject's behavior in an urban setting.
The drop-off point was my old address in New Jersey. The file dated 3 years ago. Just when you thought you had reached the deepest depths of horror, it suddenly got worse. How to turn off that small voice inside your head that started to whisper that you should be glad that now, if not before, your revenge was justifiable on any conceivable moral scale. That small voice proved, beyond any doubt, that I was damned.
Now more motivated than ever, Max continues on his quest to take out that strange lady. But first, we need to escape. We start heading back the way we came. After getting to the decontamination chamber, a 30-second countdown starts. I shoot these monitors in hopes that it will release the lock. Thankfully, it did, but causing an explosion that sends the door directly into Max's face. Fucking wonderful. I reload this time, standing out of the way of the door, freeing myself from the chamber. With only moments remaining, I haul ass to the elevator. After just barely escaping, Max pieces it all together. Armed with the knowledge of why his family was murdered and who was behind it all, Max only has one person left on his fun-time little list. But first, we get a call from an old friend, BB. BB is Max's DEA contact that gave us the mission in the beginning of the game to meet Alex, setting off the whole game's events. Don't worry, I also forgot he was a thing, but is nevertheless a loose end in desperate need of a good tying. We then get a long but quite challenging section where we had to chase BB through this massive parking garage. I don't really have a lot to say other than I enjoyed it, and the moment I was starting to feel it overstaying its welcome a little bit, it ended. So all in all, it was a pretty nicely paced shooting gallery in an open area to wrap up a side character. We get another phone call from Mr. Wooten telling us to head to the Asgard building and all of our questions will be answered. So that is exactly what we do. We then meet the legally distinct Illuminati, and Wooten explains who this mysterious lady is. But just then, things start going a little topsy-turvy, and everyone in the room gets gunned down while Max escapes by jumping through this window in slow motion. We enter a security room where we see that Wooten has actually been carrying this latent zombie virus this whole time. After getting shot, it activates the virus like some kind of biological sleeper cell agent equipped with superhuman powers and an ever-present insatiable hunger for human brains. He will use these abilities to turn every last human into a zombie and use that zombie army to take over the galaxy. Yep. Okay, so I have just been informed that literally none of that happens in this game, and in fact, a lot of people seem to be concerned about my ability to comprehend media. Apparently, all of this is just a setup. Wooten was never actually killed. Max believes that Wooten only faked his death to get out of the promises he made Max, but that the information about the scary lady was still true, so he decides to push forward. I still think my interpretation fits better, though. We then finally make our way out of Asgard, and Max then makes his way for the Aesir HQ where Nicole, our creepy demon lady, is hiding out, beginning the last section of the game. We then traverse this building, trying to get to the top floor, shooting anything with a pulse above 0, but not before I get my shit kicked in by these grenade-launching, brandishing fuckhats on this balcony who managed to kill me a total of 6 times before I am able to snipe all of them. To be clear, this is not a criticism. I really liked this section. It took me a moment to figure out the best way to take them all out, but once I did, I found it very satisfying. I am willing to accept, though, that this might just be a me thing. I am one of those sick fucks who enjoy the Anor Londo archers in Dark Souls 1, so your mileage may vary on the grenade boys. I continue making my way up the tower when I encounter this hallway filled with moving trip mines. What a brain-dead security measure, equipped with some very visible and predictable lasers that at most requires a little hop and the ability to move moderately quickly to get past. Do you find that your security is just too effective? That it's just too good at stopping all that unauthorized entry into your top secret facility, leaving your highly trained security guards with nothing to do all day? Well, do we have a product for you? Here at Jeffrey's Mediocre Security Solutions, we can offer you the aesthetic of the top-of-the-line security system with none of the benefits. With our patented, highly penetrable system, you too can make it super inconvenient for your employees to navigate their work environment while still allowing complete and easy access for any intruder, all for the low annual price of $5 million. Act now, we'll even throw in our new proprietary password generator that generates highly predictable passwords like 1234, ABCD, or even password. All you need to do is dial 1-800-INEFFECTIVE. Remember, 1-800-INEFFECTIVE, and you too can sleep soundly knowing that all of your data is easily accessible. I then make my way to an elevator when I run into Mona. We then learn that she is actually working for Demon Lady, but there's nothing to worry about because, well, she doesn't kill nice guys, you see, and Max is a nice guy. She then immediately dies. After killing the ambushers, we then get onto the elevator. We get off once reaching our floor, only to learn that elevator access to the penthouse is actually restricted, so we must first make our way down to the mainframe to gain access. So we get into another elevator when we are attacked by a helicopter. Embarrassingly, it took me a moment to figure this section out, but to escape we're actually supposed to jump onto this other elevator that takes us the rest of the way down. I clear out the enemies, making for another difficult but rather fun encounter. I then blow up the entire server room, releasing the elevator locks. I start the ride back up to the penthouse. Once reaching the top floor, we are face to face with Nicole, who hints at the reason why our wife was murdered. But unfortunately, she's behind this protective gate and was able to get away. But it's no real big issue because her goons are kind enough to open it for us, and I proceed to kill them all. The gate on the windows then start opening, and Nicole starts explaining how Max's family dying was actually a necessity, and how what is done is done. Just then, the helicopter returns, and to be honest, I have no idea what I was really supposed to do here. I don't know if I was supposed to shoot the helicopter or if I only needed to wait for it to fuck off on its own. I kinda did a combination of both and it seemed to work wonders. I then head up to the roof where shithead McGee is trying to flee in the helicopter. So in a time crunch and with limited resources, Max decides that the best way to take her out is by knocking over a radio tower onto the helicopter, which is done by shooting out these safety wires and then blasting at the tower until it finally falls, taking out the helicopter, killing Nicole, and knocking the helipad off the building, in which they all then plummet to the ground. Because of the storm, there's nobody on the ground about to get bodied by 20 tons of falling metal. Hopefully. Can you imagine how much it would suck for that guy if there was? With Nicole dead and our vendetta satisfied, the music then kicks in. Max walks to the edge of the building, coming full circle to the beginning of the game, giving us one final cutscene. That is the end of Max Payne. What a truly excellent video game. I essentially enjoyed like every minute of it, with only a few sections that I thought may have dragged on a little longer than they needed to. The story was a wild and wacky ride that takes the time to explore complicated ideas, while in the next scene would just make some kind of really stupid fucking joke. The game at no point really ever took itself remotely serious, while still respecting the player to grapple with difficult topics, and an esoteric way of conveying ideas and themes. This is of course then accompanied by some of the best cheesiest cheesy use of comic panels that did a great job at reinforcing the core vibe the game was going for, the excellent sound design, the music composition, as well as the wonderfully designed set and levels, molded this beautifully oppressive atmosphere that did a great job at adapting the neo-noir genre into a video game. All of this is supported by some flawed but very enjoyable combat and gameplay that, despite having its issues, never really annoyed me, understanding that this is the first game to truly incorporate the bullet time style that was only popularized like 2 years ago with The Matrix. No, sorry, I mean 5 years earlier with the Smirnoff commercial. In all seriousness, this is a wonderful video game that has quickly become one of my favorites, one that I will hold dear for a long time to come, and I highly recommend it to anyone that has yet to play it to give it a go. And that is the end of my descent into the world of Max Payne. If anyone has made it this far into the video, I sincerely thank you. Why you decided to watch my dumbass instead of the hundreds of other people more talented than me review this game is beyond me. But whatever the reason, thank you for watching, and all I ask is that you like, comment, subscribe, share the video, and I hope you will join me when I finally descend into the sequel, Max Payne 2.